next side of this session, what we want to discuss is, how will this happen? What are the roadblocks? What are some of the things we need to do and we don't need to do? What are the lessons learned globally? And how the city planners, the city administrators, and the technology providers need to collaborate to make this happen. Because Smart City is a very ambitious project, in my opinion, because it not only depends on technology, it depends on citizens, it depends on the city administrators, as well as the planners. So they all need to work together to make any city that they feel their own better. So if I am a citizen of Delhi, I am as much part of the decision making of Delhi as somebody who lives in Noida or in Gurgaon or in Bombay or Bangalore or anywhere else. So, sir, Dr. Maitri, I would start this question to you. As part of the School of Planning and Architecture, you're at the forefront of the thinking that is required to make existing cities, the brownfield cities smarter, I guess, and the new cities probably can start with the base of being just smart. Where do you see are the conflicts in technology, administration, and citizens coming together?
Actually, I think it is simply awareness. People are not much aware of the power of the digital India and the power of the technology, and how can it makes our city. Now, as a planner, there are 5 basic things which are required, which we have to address in a city. Either it is a housing needs or housing requirements, which makes a dent on the smartness of the city. It is a traffic and transportation network. It is an environment. It is a social infrastructure. It is a physical infrastructure. And if we address through Digital India, for example, let's say what do you mean by the smartness? And all this smartness includes or touch somehow all this aspect of physical planning. And for example, smart means safe and security. Yes. Either you are seeking of the security of a pedestrian on the road network. Are you talking of the security and safety of a driver? Are you taking of the safety and security of in a house? So that everybody feels in the city that he is secure and safe. Similarly, just my friend has discussed what Ambrish has told of the mobility. Now, mobility is from 2 different points. One can reach at every locations or capable of reaching the locations, and similarly in the different time frame. And it should not look like that I can I have a mobility at a limited access. The third is the accessibility, that is the smartness. And if accessibility is not being provided, and technology can helps a lot, either by using a passenger information system, maybe it is used by the parking information systems, making now this e-commerce has come up in a big way that reduce the congestion of the network. And similarly, we have done one study in the time Commonwealth game, and then if we simply place variable message sign on the traffic network and the traffic conditions are being communicated to the users, so a lot of people can save their time and save the fuel to come out or use the different network, so that congestion should not increase. The third one is the response. The response and reliability of the systems. I have seen that one in Australia, an accident has met on an 8-lane road, and the lady who's just phoned from the other side of the carriageway that she has seen the accident, and the time then she feels that I should also go and cross the road and help that victim. Within 5 minutes, the response team was there. That is known as a smartness. That easily, and School of Planning and Architecture, we have also done a study. For example, in Delhi, we have already selected that what are the points. If we fix up the ambulances, we will fix up the quick response team. Then, the golden time for any road victims are 15 minutes. The ambulance can reach him within that time, 10 minutes. So these are the examples of smart cities, which the planner, which we expect that it should be included. And the biggest worry from my side is that there is a crunch of uh, technological force. We have a mediocre type of technocrats. We do not have a very high end or good end technology expertise which you require to handle this type of services. I think this needs to be addressed very carefully.
That's a very interesting point. In a Digital India conference, we hear that our technology capacity needs to improve, especially in delivering smart cities. I'll share a very interesting comment on this. I think the Digital India program is one such program that we should leverage because there is diaspora across the world, and the diaspora wants to get involved. And I'll give you an example of ambulances that you said. I don't know how many people use Uber, but Uberization of services is happening. So I was at the Google campus in the US, and a lot of people who are Googlers who work there said, we want to do something. So one of the assignments I have given them is make a Uber for ambulances, and we'll pilot it in Delhi. So as a consumer, you don't have to call up 10 different providers to find which is the ambulance closest to you. If you need an ambulance, even if there are 8-10 providers, you will know which ambulance is closest to you and you will get that ambulance. So when time is critical, the 10 minutes are critical. You don't want to waste 5 minutes of it calling different numbers, finding different numbers, and and then being on a call center to figure out which ambulance is closest to you. So the message that I am trying to say is it's important to leverage the global community, and I think citizens, as we say, in building this technology capacity. But that's a very interesting point. Amrish, coming from there to you, from a technology provider, how do you see the capacity as an issue while delivering smart cities? Both technical capacity as well as administrative capacity.
So, Arvind, one thing, HP has a lot of people working in Bangalore, in R&D and in Chennai and all that, so we'd be equally glad to work with you if there are some projects which you think are, because I think, while a lot of these centers in India are global delivery centers, and to that extent, there is technology and capability available. It's just that we need to figure out how we could redirect it. So we can definitely work with the government on areas like this, especially in trying to use technology to actually build social inclusiveness. I mean, whether it's through innovative solutions, especially in the smart city context of healthcare or education. We do a lot of CSR, and our immediate focus seems to be rural areas, but there are sort of underprivileged people, whether they are needing healthcare or whether they're needing education. And really the use of technology can then be piloted and sort of worked well here. We totally agree with you that there is a skill gap which needs to be addressed. And again, I think the use of technology can be used to actually help build that gap. And one way of looking at it is the traditional way, where we've actually tied up with the National Skill Development Corporation to look at entry-level skill jobs and things like that. But again, through the use of technologies, like we have something called Video Book and all of that, you can actually help in building up competencies as well as educating people, not just at entry levels, but even at higher levels, and build that skill. And Arvind, you are actually right. It's global industries can actually play a significant role in working collaboratively with not just the Department of Electronics, but also with the Department of Education and Skill Development to use technology to build a lot of these areas, and outcome-based rather than just academic is my thought on
that's a very important point. It's outcome-based approach now. So, Dr. Govind, if I can ask you a question. One thing that I heard, and a lot of people say that we sometimes are very poor at educating our own lot, our own citizens, creating awareness about our own programs. Do you think programs like Smart City, Digital India need to be made more aware to the people, to be taken a lot to the people, and You know, you've launched a great initiative of .Bharat, native language domains. Do you think, in general, our programs need to be sold better to the citizens of the country?
Yeah, I think that's very correct, because we have to see that simply talking about smart cities, digital India, unless we inculcate that culture, we inculcate that kind of confidence level in the citizens, even if we don't do the big thing, but even the small steps in certain, even in the colonies, cleanliness, colonies, energy management, waste management, and tomorrow is going to come M2M, machine to machine, and IPv6 based devices are going to talk to each other. So if we can make those human interference less, but more devices connecting each other, and then they are managing systems in the whole city management and in the any kind of energy management or the waste management or the transportation. Because even if the ambulance example you gave, if the roads are congested, how in 10 minutes it will reach?
Absolutely.
Because there is no lane provided in our roads, exclusively for this kind of emergency, movements and all those kind of things. And citizen and the uses, simply giving a device is not enough. You have to say that, look, this you can use like this, and these are the further enhancement which you can do through the skilling, and those small steps which you can take in the society and in the offices, in the organized sectors as well as unorganized sectors.
Siddharth, a question to you. Two questions. What are some of the policy improvements we require to make this happen from a smart city perspective? And what are some best practices or best examples globally that we should look up to?
So, I mean, there are some constraints that we have seen. The Honorable Minister was talking about the National Optical Fiber Plan, which sort of connects at least to the panchayat level. I think in 2050, if you're looking at 50% of India being urbanized, I think there should be a similar rollout plan for connecting urban areas. I know that there is, by some speculation, there's the Universal Service Obligation Fund, which has a corpus of around 40,000 crores to roll out this. I think a similar plan at the national level to connect, to sort of enable cities to take up fiber optics. I know 4G network is a good step, but I think, I would love to hear from the technology specialist whether 4G spectrum is enough to cater to the demand that might go through digital content. So there are some gaps in providing municipal networks, wireless networks. I think Google has done something with Kansas City. There's some scope for implementation there. Also at the state level, a lot of this planning is guided by the regional state town planning acts. Without naming the city in India, our experience has been like the act which was formed in 1970s does not now recognize broadband as part of telecommunications. I think it was a very radical act. It was very progressive. A lot of telephone connections in the urban centers. The penetration was driven through this act. I think now it's time to sort of see whether those amendments can be made. The other thing is have a very open data policy. Lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the United States and in Europe, just making civic data public spawns a lot of solutions that come from citizens. I think sort of including citizens, but it also spawns a lot of economic opportunities. Foursquare came up because a lot of civic data was possible. Anecdotally, I would love to see how much of Google Street View has enhanced the tourism aspect, attractiveness for people to just visit cities which already have been mapped and sort of give a street view. So those kind of, if the local governments are sort of open to those opportunities and sort of make flexible to look at technology and citizens as equal partners, then those are the roadblocks that can be opened.
I think that's a very interesting point on open data. Any data that is funded, there's a policy which says not yet implemented, is that any data that is funded by the public should be made available to the public also. So it's a very valid point. Mr. Vaklu, what is apps, mobile applications being a very key enabler in making smart cities happen? Do you see smartphones to be integral part of smart cities, or smart cities will happen without smartphones also?
Well, so far as smartphones are concerned, they can be a subset of the smart cities, but not entirely dependent on that. Yes, there are some things which can easily be done through smartphones, booking your tickets, whether it's in railways or using your mobile smartphone to swipe. You need not, for security purposes, for example, it can be used as a unique, you can say, device to access places, to do your bookings and other things. But without smartphones also, the rest of the smart city needs a lot of
Absolutely.
applications. Like for education and health services, particularly education, it's not only smartphones that you need. You need proper infrastructure which can be leveraged, and there is a lot of learning which has already happened, which can be, and so far as applications are concerned, the applications apply to even the water management,
Absolutely.
to air, as I mentioned in the beginning, the security, homeland security. These are various aspects of it, energy management. So not necessarily only smartphones.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Mr. Vaklu, on that. What we'll do is we'll take a few questions from the audience. Yes.
I am Brajesh Jain from SpectraNet. This question is towards Mr. Vaklu. We are talking of delivering data over mobile. That's very fine. But we are missing that consumption of data. Today, HD movie consumes 5 gigabytes. So typical consumption in a smart city concept will be 50 to 100 gigabytes per user. Now, how would mobile deliver it? That is number one, through the spectrum. So maybe the optical fiber reaching every house with 1 gig connectivity would probably be needed. That is number one. Number two, even if it is mobile which delivers, at what kind of cost? Today we are asked to pay rupees 4,000 to 5,000 per gigabyte after the initial 1 or 2 gigabytes over 3G or 4G, which is exorbitant sum. So need is for optical fiber, and how it will be reaching. Mr. Vaklu may like to. Thank you.
Well, the first point is, if we are talking only from the smart city point of view, fiber to the home is an integral part of it. That's one. Second, there is also a feature called fixed mobile convergence. The intelligent switch judges based on your GPS location where you are. 18 hours a day, we are either in the office or at home. So during that period, it's not necessary to have your data through the mobile phone. It can judge where you are, and your calls can be diverted there. That's one thing. You can use the local Wi-Fi networks also, if that's there. And 4G network, fiber is an integral part of it. You can't have a 4G network with no fibers at all. So I don't see a challenge. Then coming to the cost of the data you mentioned, you see, if telecom is a game of numbers, if we have a large number of people accessing data, we have seen how the cost of services over the years has really come down. Even in voice, we have come down from 15 rupees a minute on the mobile phone to maybe 20, 30, 50 paisa a minute. So this has all happened because of the numbers. When we had a few handful of phones, it was different. Now when we have 930 million phones, it's a different game. So it all depends on that, and that will decide. And we don't have necessarily need 60 or 70 GB data for all the smartphone application, smart city applications. It would be much lesser, because the more the smartness would be built into the rest of the infrastructure, rather than your phone having to do all that.
Especially with cloud computing.
With cloud computing and other features.
It's a very valid point, sir. Thank you very much. If I can, if anybody else wants to respond to that, otherwise I have Dr. Bajaj patiently
No, I would
waiting.
like to respond to the first question that yes, is very much concerned as a planner, that is illegal constructions as well as poor enforcement of the road. But we have tried in Delhi by using 3D GIS cameras on certain part of the city, and within a night we have seen that room has come up and a building very good structure has come up. But once we brought it to the notice, then politically it was pressurized, then the whole project was closed. And similarly, from last 15 years with Delhi Traffic Police, I am involved in implementing intelligent transport systems. Somehow, somewhere the files are being stuck. We are trying to enforce a red light jumping system, stop line violation system, wrong way entry system, and each lining system. From last 10 years we are trying, partially we are successful, and partially every time the tender procedure or the bureaucracy has closed up. Don't think that things are working. People are behind that, and very soon in smart cities we are hopeful that this obstacles will be removed and you will get the benefits.
Thank you, Arvind. My name is Sanjeevan Bajaj. I am the CEO of FICCI Quality Forum. Drawing from our experience in Varanasi last week, my question is to you and to Mr. Pandit, because you are the closest to the government in this panel. We have all these discussions on smart city, but who are we doing it for? The local community, the local citizens. So what is the plan to involve local citizens? I know it is a challenge world over to involve citizens in any kind of policy formulation decisions, but it's still a very integral part, because if there is no involvement from their side, then many of the things are just stillborn. Thank you.
So I think the way urbanization has generally been done now, till now it has been a state subject where there's limited understanding, center doles out amounts, the states give it to the cities adopt their own projects at their own initiatives. What we're trying to do in a smart city framework right now is sort of look at if the state, center and the city have equal partnerships in developing projects. What's that also gives benefit is sort of having a permanence. Not all three levels of government will be changed at the same time. Not all three governments will have to be the same ideology, so they can come together and have a discussion. Regards to your question about public participation, I think sometimes we over-exaggerate planners' roles to be very important and very crafting solutions. I think we should involve public in sort of crafting solutions, but also reporting problems. And open data and technology is a great way to do it. They don't have to go to the citizen facilitation centers, and they don't have to go to their local offices where there's an institutional barrier for them to report problems. So sort of if we open up the civic data, I think just having all civic data open, accessible, and the being easily adaptable by the citizens will sort of already cross the barriers of citizen engagement. And then I think there has to be some confidence in people who are specialists to sort of tailor the solutions according to the local context. So thank you.